Good evening, everybody. We're going to get things started tonight. Hello.
Hello.
We are here tonight to honor the great proprietor of the Grolier Poetry Bookshop, Louisa Solano. Louisa Solano owned the shop from 1974 until 2006, which was a remarkable feat. She turned this place into an all poetry bookstore in the late 70s, which from my research is actually unforeseen. This was perhaps the first all poetry bookstore in the world. Feel free to prove me wrong otherwise, but I think that's true. It's an iconic female-owned shop when Harvard Square was a very male-dominated place to be, especially the Grolier with Gordon Kearney and Adrian Gambit owning the shop, which was a remarkable place then. But Louisa made it an international shop, she made it a poetry shop, and she made it a welcome place to be. And we have members of her family here tonight, so we want to give them a thank you and a round of applause. And we have some great readers tonight. Bobbie Steinbach and Lloyd Schwartz will be reading for the first time together some remarkable dialogues, and also some monologues by Bobbie, all poems that Lloyd has written. And George will be giving Lloyd's introduction. Bobbie will be introduced by Lloyd. And I just want to say a few things about George. George, you're one of my favorite living poets. I think you're one of the most remarkable poets, translators, and editors working today. It's been an honor to read your work. George has also taught at Suffolk University for many years, and he's finally retiring after many years of service to students, to his colleagues, and to the poetry community. So for that, George, I just want to say thank you so much. And without further ado, we're going to have Lloyd say a few words here about Louisa. I just want to say I met Louisa once, and it was an iconic, well, in my mind, iconic meeting. I was a very young bookseller at the time, and Louisa called up Carol Mankitti, who is still the owner of the shop. She had just become the owner then when her husband passed away, Fanny Mankitti, who bought the shop from Louisa in 2006. And Carol said, Louisa called and she wants us to pick up a bunch of books at her place, and I want you to come help. And so I thought, wow, it's gonna be great. I've heard tons of stories about Louisa, and she's an iconic bookseller. I've talked to her on the phone once, but we went over, and she gave me To the Age of Unknowing, the great anonymous Middle Ages text, which you should all check out. Cloud of Unknowing. That's sorry, good. And yeah, I wish I had got to meet her more, but that one meeting was very formal in my mind. And she had a wonderful poetry library, and she left an impressive legacy here. And Lloyd knew Louisa for many years, and he has a great story he's going to share about his first book launch. So thank you, everybody. Lloyd Schwartz.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, this is just a little story, but it's my favorite. You'll see why. It's my favorite story about Louisa. And so back in 1981, my first book was taken after trying to get it published for some years. And Louisa Solano and the Grolier bookstore invited me to the book party for my first book, which was absolutely thrilling for me. The day before the book party, the books had not arrived in the store. And they were somewhere at some printing place near Plymouth. And the idea that they were going to get here on time for the book party was not very promising. And Louisa said, the day before the book party, let's drive down to Plymouth and get the books. And that's what we did. We drove down to Plymouth, we picked up several cartons of books, brought them back to the store, and the party took place the next day. And I'm not sure how many bookstore owners would have gone out of their way to do that. So I have been grateful to Louisa ever since then, and for many other things as well, for her friendship and for keeping the store going. And but that was the first thing, and it remains with me. So I think George is going to introduce me. And for which I thank you.
I can't walk in here without crossing that threshold and remember being a young poet and what a jolt of excitement that meant when you looked up and you saw Louisa here at the counter and how many poets she knew and all these books that she curated. And certainly that burnished threshold has been kept golden by the Menchete family. I want to say some things about Lloyd. A number of things that I hope will apply to the reading today. Can you hear me okay in the back?
Yeah.
Good.
No.
One of the key words.
George, if you could speak up just a little bit.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
One of the key words that Alan Shapiro used to describe the intensely humane delicacy and power of Lloyd Schwartz's poetry is sweetness. When the ancient Greek poet Pindar was a boy, he fell asleep under an oak tree. And when he woke up, he found that the bees, the lyric honeybees, had coated his lips with honey, meli, but also with melody, melos. Lloyd is a master of both meli and melos, sweetness and melody. The sweetness has nothing to do with the sugar coating by which the language decays, and the melody is not some comforting, all too agreeable fluency, but what the ancients called the medicine of sorrows. What Lloyd's poems do over and over, and what serious poetry must do, is to acknowledge the brute fact of mortality and how caustic it is and how bitter that makes us, but also to activate a lyric counterbalance. For Lloyd, and anyone who knows him knows this is true of his person too, the pushback to the bitterness, the sweetness, the reminder that we have reserves of tenderness to tend to our wounds. But inside the sweetness, there's also a great acerbic wit, delivered with perfect comic timing. Yet even these astringencies are never exploited for easy, ironic effect, but are the voice of a larger, bemused concern, the medicine of sorrow. Singularity of Lloyd's poetry is that it's teeming with other voices, and you'll hear that in his duets with Bobbie. Perhaps the most moving being his mother, the Alzheimer's-stricken mother who instructed him about the Holocaust and taught him music and told him jokes, was also poetry. And you'll soon be hearing Lloyd's conversation with her and with various others, and Lloyd's conversations and back and forth with the superb Bobbie Steinbach. The very first poem in Lloyd's first book, that book he was talking about, the opening lines are already laden with the exploratory power of the dialogue form that he will experiment with for the rest of his career. And here I'll take the risk of reading a couple of Lloyd's lines. You can't read Lloyd's lines without hearing Lloyd's voice, but here's the opening. You can be so inconsiderate. You are too sensitive. then why don't you take my feelings into consideration? If you weren't so sensitive, it wouldn't matter. But he is too sensitive, and it does and doesn't matter. And though there's nothing in life that isn't bittersweet, the entire conversation could be between the human need for sweetness, of the sweetness of tenderness, and the bitterness of artistic knowledge. And the great thing is that Lloyd does not privilege one side over the other. It could be Schnabel and Szigeti playing Mozart, and Lloyd's great poem about those master musicians, and a profound dialogue of immense concern for each other's feelings about what the music can and cannot do. They're searching for the medicine of sorrow. In the end, Mozart says yes, and that's the quintessence of sweetness. Lloyd Schwartz.
Well, if I weren't reading with Bobbie, I would just want to go home. After that wonderful introduction, George, thank you. I'm very moved by that. I met Bobbie about a year ago, and we were both at a musical event. And we spoke during the intermission, and I had admired Bobbie because I had seen her perform a number of times over the years. And I thought if I was ever going to do these monologues and dialogues with someone, she would be the perfect person to do them with. And you were very receptive to the idea. You wanted to see my poems. That happened. So I will tell you a few facts about Bobbie in case you don't know. She is an actor, director, acting coach, based in Boston, but not exclusively in Boston. She has performed in countless plays and musicals with many local and regional theater companies, including the Lyric Stage, the New Repertory Theater, Huntington Theater Company, Commonwealth Shakespeare, the Boston and Milwaukee Symphonies, the Greater Boston Stage Company, the Michigan Opera Theater, and the Boston Playwrights Theater. I'm leaving some things out. I'm sure of. She's a founding member of the Actors Shakespeare Project, where as a resident actor, she's appeared in 22 Shakespeare plays, most recently as Jaques in As You Like It. Among her numerous honors and awards are the Boston Theater Critics 2023 Eliot Norton Prize for Sustained Excellence. I can't think of anyone more deserving. The 2016 Huntington Theater Company's Lunt-Fontanne Fellowship and the Theatre Communications Guild's prestigious 2-year resident actor Fox Fellowship for Distinguished Achievement, for which he partnered with the Actors Shakespeare Project to develop the company project, I Am Lear, and a solo show In Bed with the Bard. During the pandemic lockdown, she was the host of broadband collaboratives All Together Now, streaming on YouTube and Facebook, where she presented and interviewed performing artists, composers, and writers from around the world. I wanted to find a critical comment about Bobbie's work, and I found this, this little paragraph that's describing her performance in Stephen Sondheim's A Little Night Music. And it was about 10 years ago. And this is from a review of that play. As Desiree's ancient, worldly wise mother, the role created by the legendary Hermione Gingold, with her checkered past and singing of her lucrative liaison with upper echelon royalty from whom she acquired some position plus a tiny Titian. Veteran Boston actress Bobbie Steinbach, pretty legendary herself around these parts, gave the most thoroughly secure and consistently articulate performance. Her dramatic concentration, rich voice, both speaking and singing, and impeccable diction, a model for everyone in the company. I wrote that 9 years before we met. And I am thrilled to be reading my poems with Bobbie.
Well, thank you. I told Floyd today, I was busy. Didn't I?
I said I was too.
Yes, you did. Hey,
So here we go.
there we go.
Oops. Who's on first? You can be so inconsiderate.
You are too sensitive.
Then why don't you take my feelings into consideration?
If you weren't so sensitive, it wouldn't matter.
You seem to care about me only when you want me to do something for you.
You do much for people.
I thought you were going home because you were too tired to go with me to a bar.
I was, but Norman didn't want to come here alone.
I'm awfully tired. Do you mind taking the subway home? You could stay over. I'll take you home. Why do we have sex only when you want to?
Because you want to have sex all the time.
Relationships work when two people equally desire to give to each other.
Relationships rarely work.
Do you love me?
Of course. But I resent it.
Why aren't you more affectionate?
I am.
Couldn't we ever speak to each other without irony?
Sure.
I love you, you know.
Yes. Why?
Do you resent my advice?
Yes, especially because you're usually right.
Why do you like these paintings?
What isn't there is more important than what is.
Your taste sometimes seems strange to me.
I'm a Philistine.
A real Philistine would never admit it.
I suppose they're right.
Aren't you interested in what I care about?
Yes, but not now.
We should be more open with each other.
Yes.
Shall we talk things over?
What is there to say?
Are you ever going to cut down on your smoking?
It's all right. I don't inhale.
Sometimes I get very annoyed with you.
The world is annoying.
Your cynicism is too easy.
Words interfere with the expression of complex realities.
Do you enjoy suffering?
You can't work if you don't suffer.
But we suffer anyway.
I know.
Do you think we ever learn anything?
I learned to do without.
We're always so negative.
I feel death all the time,
Are you afraid of anything?
not working.
What shall we do for dinner?
Doesn't matter. Whatever you'd like.
Why don't you care more?
I do.
6 words. Yes, no, maybe, sometimes, always, never.
Never.
Yes,
Always.
no,
Sometimes.
maybe. Maybe never sometimes.
Yes. No, always. Always, maybe.
No, never, yes.
Sometimes. Sometimes. Always. Yes.
Maybe never.
No. No. Sometimes.
Never.
Always.
Maybe.
Yes. Yes. No. Maybe. Sometimes. Always. Never. I walk on hooked rugs. My beds are covered with patchwork. Across the road, they sell corn and red beans, fresh picked. And the milk in bottles has a layer of cream an inch thick at the top. This was my father's home I have come back to. My elderly cousin is working her latest jigsaw puzzle in the spare room. My guest for the weekend is a young teacher with hair longer than mine and a nicely trimmed beard. He's reading my first editions. We'll talk about novels and politics, read the papers, play Scrabble with my elderly cousin, catch up on the unread magazines. He'll help me carry and unload the books I have moved here from the city. Steel wool the old chest, ready for refinishing. So many complicated, trivial, and lovely things. Sturdy old leather Bible with gold edges and patterns in the rough grain. The names of ancestors firmly inscribed. I've had a good life without sex or sordidness or unmerited happiness.
Self-portrait for Ralph Hamilton. I was sitting in her living room, looking very hard at the painting I had given her. I asked her for a knife and very deliberately cut up the canvas. She was furious. I told her, I'll paint you a good one. Every painting is a self-portrait. I always straighten the pictures on people's walls. I live at home, painting while my parents are away at work. I cook their dinner. It's a compromise, but it's the only way I can afford to work. Better to compromise my life. And if I suffer, So much the better. Not easy. They're amazingly patient. My mother thinks I'm a great artist. My paintings are all over the walls, mostly piled up against the window in the dining room. The dining room hasn't seen the light of day in 3 years. I read a lot when I'm not painting and play the piano badly. I'm fascinated by words. Some of my paintings have words in them. Away. Get well. In college, I wrote my autobiography. I've been commissioned to do a portrait. I've done several, but I shouldn't do them. I don't know how. Every portrait becomes just another painting.
In your self-portrait, the blinds are open, but you're looking away. Your eyes green and enormous. There's a sunny street outside. Gray and black shadows cover your face, your mouth twisted with irony or tenderness, refusing to speak. You say,
It's just another painting.
a train disappearing over a hill, a burnt out house, two trucks colliding in midair. Father, your mother, a baby, a chair, a hand on a Venetian blind.
Every painting is a self-portrait. Love. Why live? I never really thought. I never went to church or read books. I worked for a railroad, but work was like sleepwalking. I took drugs and drove around. I married a girl who loved me. Why? I wasn't very good to her most of the time. And she died.
I wasn't very pretty or bright. School meant nothing. I couldn't wait till it was over. After graduation, I went to work for my father. I needed to get out. I can remember a fight about a car. I wanted one so badly, and they knew it was so I could be with him.
Sometimes I felt grateful, even if she was a little overweight. I wasn't such a winner myself. We broke up a couple of times. I hit her once when we were stoned. After we got married, I had myself dried out. We got more serious. We were even planning to get married again in church.
Things got better after he got off the drugs. Things also didn't change. Friday night, bowling, on a hockey game. Saturday, a movie, double date. Sunday, my parents, who were beginning to accept the situation. Nothing happened. Only sometimes it happened more peacefully.
What could I do? She was already dead in the ambulance. Never sick a day in her life. Who could believe this? I knew they'd blame me. No one said a word. But I knew. Everyone said it was terrible, but that I was young. I should be patient. I'd get over it.
I felt dizzy. We were in the kitchen talking while I was making dinner. I was a terrible cook. I said I was feeling dizzy. It was getting harder to breathe. I remember falling and him leaning over me, saying my name, asking, "What's the matter?" I remember thinking, someone should turn off the stove.
I put my flower on her casket like everyone else. Even the priest was upset. She was so young. He asked me to come and see him. Nobody could know what we felt. I don't think I knew myself. All I could think was I wanted to be with her, inside.
Why did you do it?
I had to be with you.
You were so young.
I couldn't wait.
You were alive.
The world was a coffin.
Did it hurt much?
I don't remember now. Good night, Gracie. For Gracie Allen, 1906 to 1964.
Almost everything I know today, I learned by listening to myself when I was talking about things I didn't understand.
Mrs. Burns, I love that zany character of yours.
So do I, or else I wouldn't have married him.
You mean you understand it?
Of course. When I misunderstand what you say, I always know what you're talking about.
Home very late from a Hollywood party. George and Gracie can hear their phone ringing, but can't find the key to get in. George is vexed and tired, but Gracie is dying to wake Blanche Morton next door and gossip about dancing with Gary Cooper.
His belt buckle ruined my gardenia.
Soon, the Mortons are locked out. Gracie, did you close the door?
No, but I will.
The locksmith's tools locked in. Will his jealous new wife ever believe this? And the phone never stops. Day breaks and George breaks in through a window. I've got a wonderful idea, he announces. From now on, we'll leave a door key under the mat.
But I put one there months ago,
Gracie argued.
and we couldn't get in last night.
The telephone again. Who's been trying to get through? Gracie, who was on the phone?
I was. It's not a matter of whether I'm right or wrong, it's a matter of principle. Men are so deceitful. They look you right in the eye while they're doing things behind your back. Don't rush me. It isn't easy making up the truth.
Ronnie's dying for a part in a new play, whose famous author is fascinated by Gracie. But the only role still open is intended for a middle-aged actress, sole support of her widowed mother.
I'm a widow too,
Gracie fibs.
and Ronnie supports me.
Smitten, the playwright invites her to dine in his room.
My husband died in a shipwreck
She embroiders.
on our honeymoon.
Lucky you survived.
Oh, I wasn't there.
In breezes Ronnie and asks for Dad. Gracie, thinking fast.
He can never forget his father.
Playwright, bewildered. But he never knew him. Gracie, triumphant.
If he knew him, he'd forget him.
Enter the widow Morton with Ronnie's long-lost father to unravel Gracie's tangled web. Blushing, the playwright offers Ronnie a part. Ronnie's in heaven, Gracie's forgiven. The playwright, like George himself, resigned to applaud her irresistible assassinations.
I may not be here long.
Where are you going?
Oh, don't I wish I knew. I didn't think people felt this wonderful when they were going, but. And again, this is the first time I've gone. If you ask me a question and I don't answer, don't be nervous. Just take your hat off.
How casually we treated Gracie's illness. Those pills made me feel very secure. I figured we could go on this way year after year. It never entered my mind that anything would change it. Then one evening, Gracie had another one of her attacks. I gave her the pill. We held on to each other. But this time it didn't work. When the pain continued, I called Dr. Kennemer, and they rushed Gracie to the hospital. 2 hours later, Gracie was gone.
He's crazy about dancing. His new wife has got to be a very good dancer.
Gracie thinks she's dying. Having opened by mistake Harry Von Zell's telegram meant to save George from a weekend seasick on his sponsor's yacht. Examine your wife, condition serious, urge you do not leave her.
I'm a very sick woman, but my health is so good, I didn't even know it.
She's had 3 agencies send over their most attractive candidates to replace the late Mrs. Burns. Sounds like it won't be easy to fill her shoes.
What size do you wear?
How old was she when she passed on?
I'd rather not say. She hasn't passed on far enough for that.
George, however, has already chosen his next wife, who, relieved, reprieved, would rather George hadn't explained.
It's such a letdown. After this, how can I be gay about an ordinary thing like living?
She forgets. The one who told me about the Holocaust, who taught me moral distinctions, who gave me music and told me jokes, is in a nursing home. Lonely, scared, surrounded only by people so much worse off, inarticulate, incapacitated, drooling. She thinks she's in a crazy house. She's not crazy. She's there. I put her there because she can't take care of herself, can't be left alone. She's old. She forgets. She forgets her medicine. She forgets what she's not supposed to eat. She forgets what day it is. She remembers who she is and who she was, and knows she's not herself. She can't remember what's wrong with her
What's wrong with me, honey?
or why she's there. But she knows her brain isn't working right. Her brain needs air. Oxygen has a hard time squeezing through her hardened arteries. So her blood congeals. Little clots cause little strokes, which destroy her memory. Aspirin, which thins the blood and helps keep the oxygen flowing, might help her remember. But she's old. Part of her stomach has turned upside down. Her food gets stuck in her chest, blocks her breath. She panics, forces herself to vomit, which makes her bleed, which damages her heart. A simple operation could fix her stomach. But doctors won't operate on someone with a damaged heart. And aspirin makes her bleed, so she can't take aspirin. So she forgets. I live in another city. Once when I came to visit, she wasn't thinking about her food. She ate too much or too fast, and the food wouldn't go down. So she panicked, forced herself to vomit, and had a heart attack. She was in the hospital for 3 weeks, which she doesn't remember. So I've had to put the one who gave me music and told me jokes, who taught me moral distinctions and warned me never to forget the Holocaust. I've had to put her in a nursing home, a crazy house, where she's scared and lonely, where she stares out the window and asks,
What day is today? Why can't I go home? What's wrong with me, honey? Why am I here?
the two horses, a memory.
You said you had lunch in Pittsfield. Was it on North Street? That reminds me of when we lived on a farm. Must be 80 years ago. We went to a one-room schoolhouse. Didn't you drive past it once? Each row was a different grade. I sat in the first seat of the first row. The teacher's name was Miss Brown. She was so pretty. I wonder if she's still alive. The day before we left the farm, our cat disappeared. We couldn't find her anywhere. I was sad for weeks. 3 months later, she showed up at our new house in Pittsfield, Robbins Avenue. I can't think of the number now. My sister was in New York. She didn't like the people she was living with, so she'd visit us. She fell in love with a young man who lived next door, Maurice. Their uncle Maurice. They got married and moved to Cleveland. They're both gone now, aren't they? You know, I can't picture her. A few years later, we moved to New York. This just jumped into my mind. I must have been 3 years old. We were still in Russia. Mir, a small town but famous for its yeshiva. My oldest brother, Joe, took our horses down to the river. They were the two best horses in the town. My father had a phaeton, a beautiful old buggy. He was like a taxi driver. He took people to Minsk or Vilna. That day he was at the station, a passenger station, waiting for customers. My brother was still just a kid. He must have been washing the horses in the river. I can remember it was a hot day. Maybe he was giving them a drink. And while I was watching, the reins got caught on a pole in the river. The horses kept twisting the reins around that pole. It was slippery. The reins kept sliding down under the water and they were pulling the horses down with them. I ran into town and got my father, who came running back with a knife in his teeth. He jumped into the river with all his clothes on. He took the knife and sawed away at the reins until he finally cut through. He saved the horses. I haven't thought about this in 1,000 years. Like a dream. You get up, it's forgotten. And then it all comes back. Didn't I ever tell you? Oh, look at me, I'm starting to cry. What's there to cry about? Such an old memory. Why should it make me cry?
He tells his mother what he's working on. I'm writing a poem about you.
You are. What's it about?
It's the story about your childhood, the horses in the river.
Oh, the ones that nearly drowned, I saved them.
You told it to me just a few weeks ago.
I should dig up more of my memories.
I wish you would.
Like when I lived on the farm and one of the girls fell down a well.
Yes.
I forget if it was Rose or Pauline. It was a deep well.
I remember that story.
Have you finished your poem?
I'm still working on it.
You mean you're correcting it with commas and semicolons?
Exactly.
When can I see it?
As soon as it's finished.
Is it an epic?
It's not that long.
No. I mean, all my thoughts, the flashes of what's going through my life, the whole family history, living through the woe, the river, the water.
I know.
Will it be published?
I have to finish it first.
Better to write about real life. That's more important than writing something fanciful.
I try to write all my poems about real life.
You see, the apple never falls far from the tree.
I guess not.
You're my apple.
There's probably a worm crawling through that apple.
And it's got something sweet to chew on.
Well, you're my tree.
Yes, I'm a tree. You're an apple. I'm a tree.
Little kisses. My mother is mad at the sun. She hates the daylight. One more new day. In a nursing home, stuck in a wheelchair, she thinks she's been abandoned. In the background, a woman's nonstop wail. My mother can barely hear me on the phone. She doesn't know she's speaking to her son. I have to tell her she's speaking to her son.
Oh, then I'm not alone. I have a son.
Please, don't forget that.
How could I forget that? And you? Who are you? Are we related?
Of course.
Are you my father?
Don't you remember your father?
Are you my brother?
You're my mother.
I'm your mother.
Of course,
Was I a good mother?
you were, you are a wonderful mother.
I'm glad you're my son. What's your name?
You don't remember?
Can't think of it. I'm all mixed up. Are we related?
You're my mother.
Did I ask you that before?
Yes.
Are you angry?
Why should I be angry?
Because I'm so stupid.
What lovely flowers, the nurse says. Did your son bring them?
Who?
Your son. Isn't this your son?
He's my friend.
I can't stop myself. Where is your son?
Where's my son? What do you mean?
Where is your son now?
He's dead.
Mrs. Schwartz, your son is on the phone.
My son?
Yes, say hello.
Hello.
Hello. How are you feeling?
Much better, thank you. Why did you call?
I call you every day.
Forgive me, darling. I didn't remember. Well, hello. How did you know I was here? This is my son, isn't that right? You're my son, aren't you? You came out of my body. I'm your mother. Isn't that right? Isn't he handsome, even if he does have a beard? I'm your mother. I'd love you no matter what you look like. Wouldn't I? Give me a little kiss, oh will ya, huh? What are you gonna miss, oh will ya, huh? God, oh gee, why do you refuse? I can't see what you're gonna lose, oh, give me a little kiss, oh will ya, huh? And I'll give it right back to you. Oh, you see? I know all the words. I probably won't remember them tomorrow.
One second.
Mhm. Our waltz.
Our waltz. I'm supposed to say. Forgot.
This is my dream. I'm dancing. Do you know how to dance? You like to dance? Waltzing. It's like electricity. It hurts when I walk. So I pick up a chair and I start to waltz. I look in the mirror and there I am dancing to the chair. I say to the mirror, I'm not so old. But the mirror says, yes, you are. You're old. You're nearly 90 years old. What are you doing waltzing around with a chair? Now, isn't that silly? An old lady? This is my dream. I see myself in the mirror waltzing with a chair. And that's the end of my dream. I once knew how to dance. I once knew how to waltz. And now I shall bid you good night.
Paul Verlaine, sentimental conversation. In an ancient park, isolated and icy, two passing ships, two passing shapes come passing by. Their lips are slack, their eyes dead. It takes effort to make out their words. In the ancient park, isolated, icy, two ghosts trying to call back their past. Do you ever think about our old ecstasy?
Why would you want me to remember that?
Does your heart still beat faster only at my name? Do you still see my soul in your dreams?
No,
Oh, those lovely days of happiness, unspeakable, when we seemed joined at the mouth.
possibly.
The sky, how blue it was. We had such great hopes.
Hope has flown off, wounded, through the black clouds.
Soon they disappeared through the tangled weeds, and only night understood their words. Who's on first?
You can be so inconsiderate.
You are too sensitive.
Then why don't you take my feelings into consideration?
If you weren't so sensitive, it wouldn't matter.
You seem to care about me only when you want me to do something for you.
You do too much for people.
I thought you were going home because you were too tired to go with me to a bar.
I was, but Norman didn't want to come here alone.
I'm awfully tired. Do you mind taking the subway home? You could stay over. I'll take you home. Why do we have sex only when you want to?
Because you want to have sex all the time.
Relationships work when two people equally desire to give to each other.
Relationships rarely work.
Do you love me?
Of course, but I resent it.
Why aren't you more affectionate?
I am.
Couldn't we ever speak to each other without irony?
Sure.
I love you, you know.
Yes, but why?
Do you resent my advice?
Yes, especially because you're usually right.
Why do you like these paintings?
What isn't there is more important than what is.
Your taste sometimes seems strange to me.
I'm a Philistine.
A real Philistine would never admit it.
I suppose you're right.
Aren't you interested in what I care about?
Yes, but not now.
We should be more open with each other.
Yes,
Shall we talk things over?
what is there to say?
Are you ever going to cut down on your smoking?
It's all right. I don't inhale.
Sometimes I get very annoyed with you.
The world is annoying.
Your cynicism is too easy.
Words interfere with the expression of complex realities.
Do you enjoy suffering?
You can't work if you don't suffer.
But we suffer anyway.
I know.
Do you think we ever learn anything?
I've learned to do without.
You're always so negative.
I feel death all the time,
Are you afraid of anything?
not working.
What should we do for dinner?
It doesn't matter. Whatever you'd like.
Why don't you care more?
I do. Thank you, James, for making this possible. Thank you to the Grolier, Bobbie. Thank you so much for being willing to do this.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
Let's give one more round of applause.
Thank you for coming, those of you who are watching on Zoom. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. If you could all please put your chairs up against one of the walls. There's some books for sale. Thanks again for coming.
Yes. No.
It was great. It was really fun.